You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello everybody, Alex here. I am so glad that you are joining me today. We are going to be talking about the past and how we begin to get ourselves unstuck from the hold of the past and what has happened to us. But we're going to be talking about it as usual on here from a slightly different perspective than what you are likely seeing on online, in books, social media, that kind of stuff. And this has been a very helpful way of thinking about it for me because, again, a lot of it is the experience that things create for us. And for many of us, our past and how it impacts the future is a really big source of guilt and shame. And that's why I think it is both true that we need to address it, but what I don't agree with is how we talk about it. So we're going to dig into that. Before we start, I just wanted to invite you to our February 21st, that is the day it kicks off, our 4-day live brain health challenge. This challenge is for you. We're going to be spending 4 days, 90 minutes every day. So this is not a small little thing. This is a process that we're going to be teaching you over 4 days. And it is for you if you have a history in your life of living in survival mode. So if you have any sort of trauma, big T or little t, anything like that, health, long-standing health concerns, all of that stuff falls into that category. And then 2, it is for you if you are someone who's like, I keep trying to change what I do, right? How I eat, what I take when I sleep, how I wake up, when I do things. I'm trying to change all that, but it's either not getting me the results I want, or I keep falling off the wagon with them, and I feel like if I could keep doing them, I would actually get the results. So either category you fall in, it's going to be for you. We're going to put the show notes down below, but it's also zestyginger.com/habit. Right? The other thing about this challenge is that you could win $1,000. So we have everything in that challenge is brain-based, and part of what the brain likes too is when there's something shiny to look forward to, right? We're going to talk about the past today, and then we are going to talk about them in the challenge. And when there is motivation, we keep going. So with the 4-day challenge, when you participate, you're going to be sorry, I'm blanking on the word. Added to, that's not the word I was looking for, but added to the challenge, to the raffle to win $1,000. And that's just $1,000. There's no requirements for that or whatever. It's just cash. And when you bring friends, each friend that you bring, you get an extra entry into that $1,000 raffle. And so for that, if and when you're bringing friends, shoot us an email with their names and the email that they signed up with, so we know to credit you for the raffle. Yeah, so it's going to be so fun. Last time we just had such amazing transformations from this challenge, because when you have a system and a strategy for implementation and for transformation, holy cow, do things get easier. And Megan and I can say that completely from personal experience, because we did the whole thing of, it's just like with health, the same with my endometriosis, same with my central nervous system. Once I got the strategy and I knew how to interact with my central nervous system, boy, things change. So, really excited there. It kicks off February 21st. All right, so let's talk about the past. The past is something that, especially when it comes to health, but transformation in general, is we tend to predict what is going to happen based off what has happened. And when you see a lot of the messaging around, like, don't operate from your past and let your past go and be in the present now, and if you didn't have your past stories, you could be anything, that is, to me, absolutely true, right? When we can step into the new identity, that's what is hardwired in. Therefore, we act and behave and live out the experience from that new identity. But here's why I think it's important to talk about the process of healing our past rather than just telling people to be in the present moment, don't worry about their past, and pretend like it didn't exist. Right? That was just not always the wording, but that's essentially the message. And what happened with me, probably what happens with a lot of people, is you hear that, you're like, yeah, that totally makes sense. If I could do that, things would be easier, right? And you try to do it, and sometimes you can, and sometimes then the past comes back. You get a flare, some person calls from your past, and off you go. And then what I would do is feel bad about it, feel like, gosh, I already did that. I thought I went through it. I thought I was over that. Blah 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 blah, and then off I'd go. But here's the thing that I realized: when it comes to the brain and the central nervous system, we have a supercomputer that stores memories of the past. That is built in, and we want that there because we want to know, good or bad, what patterns our brain has to recognize to know, ooh, that's the good stuff, right? You hear silly example, but like you hear the ice cream truck music. Granted, it's annoying AF, but you hear the ice cream and you think ice cream, right? And it's that pattern that goes yum. And then threats in the environment of, ooh, I get that stiff feeling in the back of my neck. Oh, I know that's going to turn into a headache for 10 days or whatever that you have, or oh, I'm having spotting, this will be a rough cycle kind of thing. That kind of pattern recognition is what our brains had designed for knowing what to go towards and what to avoid. I think that when we create these sound bites that's like, just be in the present and don't be influenced by the past, like I said, again, it's true, but it denies the fact that our physiology is not set up such that you magically forget the past just because you feel like forgetting it. What this does then, I think, it takes away the expectation that we should just get over it or that we don't operate from that way anymore. When I went from having the identity of always being in pain to saying I'm someone who feels comfortable in my body, that was a process. And I did try the thing where I was like, oh, just pretend, but you can only pretend for so long, and quite frankly, you can't pretend to the universe and you can't pretend to your own mind. It's always on, it's always thinking, it's always registering, it's always going to be perceiving, right? Your central nervous system. And so with that, it didn't happen like that, right? And once I started seeing it as like there's a process to rewiring my brain to recognize and focus on different patterns, then I actually started making a lot more progress because my view of what the steps would be and how I felt about it then, right, when the past came back and I got swept up in it, I wasn't like, oh no, here we go again. It was like, hey, I'm in the process. And because my narrative was I'm in the process, then the next question is, well, what resources do I have to deal with this next step of the process? It is not, let me take this time and energy beating myself up, which, while you stay busy, doesn't actually accomplish anything, right? And so this is really looking at the authenticity of this whole system and saying, what is true for me? I think that on certain topics where our central nervous system doesn't have any of those kind of red flags and bells attached to them, we really can make very rapid changes. There are some things that you just decide you want to do and you go off and do it and whatever. There's nothing to that. There you just kind of switch. And that's where I think some people would talk from that place, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you can do it on a big thing, absolutely cool, right? That we're not taking away any strategies here. The goal is to add more strategies in. And so for that, once we see the machine that we have, supercomputer that we have, has this information stored, my task is to step by step work on rewiring that system by choosing where I'm going. And when the past comes up, I'm going to do the emotional and mindset and energy work around it to release it. That is where we get up and running. Those questions have answers. There's things to do. There's tons of options. There's so much that I've shared on the podcast and, with the challenge or Health Transformation Accelerated program. That's what we do. There's tons of ways to get at that. So when we are looking at it that way and all of a sudden it turns out we have all these solutions to, then we can do something about that. So it really comes down to appreciating which strategy is going to work for you. And if this whole thing of, well, I've been a certain way, I've been anxious for a long time, or I've been depressed for a long time, how do I kind of forget that and move on? And if you're struggling with that, then just know there is a different way of looking at this. This allows us to look at it as a progression. It's like working out, it's like whatever, lifting more weight. You build that muscle. And the same thing here, we are rebuilding the pattern recognition at the central nervous system level. Therefore, we are going to find it easier and easier to interact with that newness and the old in a different way. It's a lot more empowering and doesn't give us the opportunity to feel that we failed in the same way, because when it's a process, you know that if you're not there yet, then you have to keep going, right? The process isn't done if you haven't reached the outcome, and you kind of put one foot in front of the other. That feels so different than these conversations around, oh, just forget your past, or just surrender, or just trust yourself. If you could, you would, right? Once you know about the concept, if you could, you really would. And so next up, if that's not happening, is what does need to happen to make that the case. We don't need to say I'm a failure or I've given up, because we can't do it like other people do it. Because sometimes other people can. And then, to be honest, there's a lot of people out there just saying stuff. That doesn't mean that they're actually living it or that they are capable of doing it either. So it's important to keep that in mind. Just because you're seeing it does not mean that that person's doing it. That is not an excuse or an invitation for you to beat yourself up about it. Okay, so this is a little extra love from Alex today of we all need to give ourselves way more grace and have way more compassion about all of this stuff, including our past. You experienced what you experienced. There's nothing wrong with honoring that. And that is a part of you that you will decide how much of that comes with you. You get to decide how big that suitcase that you take along is when you go. And sometimes we want to keep more of it because we have lots of lessons. Sometimes things are, completely retired. You get to make the call. Let's talk about making the call and acknowledging the authenticity that goes along with actually addressing it, rather than creating these tiny sound bites that sound good, but for the vast majority of people is inauthentic to what their experience really is. All right, I'm sending you so much love as you navigate this whole thing. You are doing amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Megan and I have a request. We are so close to 1 million downloads. If you haven't left a review yet, could you please do that? If you don't mind. I know it seems like a really small thing because all the podcasters always ask for that. But the reality is that it actually makes a really big difference when it comes to people being able to find the podcast and it being shown to people and visibility and all of that. So if you could please write a review, that would be amazing. We are so appreciative of it. Or if you are up for sharing it with some friends or sharing it on your social media, that would really mean a lot to us as well. Alrighty, I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series.